Sir, if we can't close the iris, we're finished. We have to arm the self-destruct.
What could cause the iris to cease functioning correctly?
I don't know, but that doesn't matter right...
Hold it, I think I know what it is. It's the third piece of the artifact, the one Major Calder supposedly found for us. I didn't have much time to study it, but the feeling I got was different. I never got a vision or any other real sense of power from it. It's a fake. We have to find it and destroy it.
Carter?
The iris has dozens of fail-safes. If it's not working, it has to be some sort of external influence. Now, the Goa'uld have tried this sort of thing before and always failed because they can't get a blocking signal through the iris. If the blocking signal was located on this side of the gate, then...
Where is it?
They were packing it up before moving it upstairs for spectral analysis.
I believe our first course of action must be to retrieve the Kull Disruptors. Super soldiers are in the facility, and we will have nothing with which to defend ourselves.
We should also try and close the blast doors behind us where possible. It might halter progress a bit. Carter, that's your job. This day just keeps getting better. All right, Carter, you got point. Let's move.
Hi, I'm David Reed. Welcome to Dial the Gate, the Stargate Oral History Project, episode 349. I'm really excited you're with me for this one. This is a special show. Ben Lenzo, CEO of Perception, a media entertainment company based in Sydney, Australia, is with us for this show. He was also the writer of Stargate SG-1, The Alliance, which was a PC, Xbox, and PlayStation Stargate first-person shooter set in Brad Wright's, Jonathan Glassner's, and Robert C. Cooper's SG-1 universe. It was in development in the mid-2000s, and then it was canceled. And we are going to take you through that story. As you've already seen in a preview here, you're going to see never-before-released content from that game, where they got it about 80% of the way, according to one of my friends whom you're going to meet. And we're going to show you what could have been. And you're going to hear some familiar faces that are no longer with us and get some insight into just what happened in a way that I don't think Ben has stated publicly before. 20 years ago this month, the funding was terminated for the game. And it's always been a sore spot for me, particularly as part of the Stargate Worlds group that came next, because it was the same thing that happened to us. I'm noticing a trend here, especially the third episode of the mobile game was also canceled. Timekeeper seems to be holding on, but I hope that all of their episodes get released. This is mainly to promote's the wrong word, acknowledge the developers who worked on this thing for 2 years, in some cases, and the story that Ben had created, and we're going to explore it in a little bit more detail for you, talk to you about the enemies and the elements that were being added, and some familiar faces that were going to be brought back. We're going to show you, in addition to some clips interspersed through the interview of gameplay, we're going to show you some artwork and some various other things that we were able to find, and share with you the vision that was in development and, again, what would have been. So let's bring in Ben Lenzo of Stargate SG-1, The Alliance, and show you a good time over this next couple of hours as you see what could have been. I am privileged to be joined by Perception CEO and the writer of Stargate SG-1, The Alliance, Ben Lenzo. Sir, welcome to Dial the Gate. It is a privilege to have you.
I'm happy to be here.
You were in process for Stargate the Alliance for quite a while. They pulled the plug on it 20 years ago. I think the funding was pulled 20 years ago this month, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm really looking forward to going through and seeing with you what would have been. But in the meantime, what's going on in your world these days? Bring us up to speed.
I'm still doing software. I don't do games anymore, but I still do with software, and both for sort of internal projects that we do, and we work with a bunch of different clients, from sort of founders through to businesses doing sort of 8 figures. We generally work on systems and processes and sometimes boring stuff. We don't get the kind of buzz of video games anymore. But I've also done some writing over the years. Had an animated series sort of get very close once before, which was an amusing adventure. Married, 2 kids.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been 20 years. So,
Wow.
yeah. My kids weren't born when we were doing Stargate. So.
Wow. What does Stargate mean to you?
Well, now it's mixed emotions. So I was a massive fan of the show, of SG-1 originally. We got the license to do games from the show because we were fans, and we thought this is just going to be a perfect vehicle for a video game. And we had the rights for SG-1 and then any future spin-offs, and Atlantis had just sort of either had been announced or had just started when we were beginning production. Universe hadn't come out yet. But I mean, I still love Stargate. I love Universe. I think Universe is awesome. I kind of like that slow build, continuous storyline in shows. But SG-1's just a lot of fun, man. Like SG-1's a lot of fun. The downside of it is obviously from the gaming aspect. It was a difficult period of time. 20 years have passed, but yeah, it still stings a little bit.
Was it your idea to approach MGM for a Stargate first-person shooter?
Yeah. Well, I think at the time it was first-person shooter, but it was Stargate games. So the first one was going to be a video game, but we also had started design work on an RPG as well, which was a mix of more the Stargate universe as a whole, not the show, but it encompassed Atlantis and SG-1 from the RPG perspective. But yes, we approached MGM, and that took a long time to get that deal happening, and we kind of did that. We had been developing coin-op games in the past, so we'd done a couple of racing games where you put money in the machine, you play for 3 minutes, and off you go. And we'd done some stuff for video games in the home market, sort of just contract work for different things. We did some EA Sports stuff early on, but we wanted to be sort of more in control of our own destiny, so to speak. If you'll excuse the Stargate pun. Mm-hmm. And we and what would typically happen back in the day was a developer, which we were a developer would go to a publisher and say, hey, I want to do this game. And the developer and the publisher would go, okay, well, I'm going to fund this game, but I'm going to own all the IP and I'm going to control it. And essentially you're living month to month on a milestone basis. And back in the day, the publisher could sort of basically say, well, you haven't delivered what you said you were going to deliver, even though we've changed the milestone a little bit. And so that uncertainty was not something I wanted for the business. Mm-hmm. And we had an experience with EA, so we signed a deal with EA back in the day, and they ended up canceling the project like 6 weeks in, because it was a boat racing game. It was one of our coin-op games that they signed on board and then went, oh, well, boat racing games don't work. So this information would have been handy 6 weeks ago, So, I mean, they paid us our money, and that, that's fine. But I didn't want that to happen again. And I didn't want to be a work for hire shop. That was really what it was about. And so we thought, well, normally what was happening is publishers would acquire the rights to different IP, and then they would either do that internally or kind of back in the day farm that out to sort of the cheapest developer they could find. we wanted to acquire the license to these things ourselves and then go to the publisher with that license in hand. So we had a bit more control over what was going to happen. And I mean, I think we looked at a couple of different things, but Stargate kind of kept coming back, and it was very early. Well, not very early, but it was early to go. Oh well, let's spend a mountain of money on licensing for Stargate. But we ended up approaching MGM and acquired the license, and then went to a publisher. There was a bit of hand in hand with it, but yeah, that's how we tackled it.
When in the show did you acquire the license? Season 5, season 6? When would this have been? I'm curious to know.
Well, when we started, it was probably around. I mean, I'm guessing we're going back a long way now, but I'm thinking it was maybe season 4, season 5, and we probably
2000,
got it around 6, and we probably started. Yeah, we probably started around 2002, maybe, and I think we signed the deal with the publisher Christmas Eve 2023.
2003.
Yes, sorry, not 2023, 2003.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
So that's.
I remember having to go to the office at 2 a.m, and we had the old thermal fax machines, and so you'd have to do each page and they come out. So yes, so I know it was Christmas Eve 2003.
So yeah, so 2004 was when season 8 was filmed and began to air. So that's a long time ago,
right.
man.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what was your ambition for this? What turns into a first-person shooter? Where do you put your ceiling? Because the sky is the limit here. You can go anywhere.
Yeah. Well, you put your ceiling in terms of budget and time. The reason I liked Stargate as a game was obviously as a television show with a production budget and locations. You can only go to the Canadian forest so many times. That there's only so many different ways you can make that look on a budget each year. In a video game, we can create a level where we can go anywhere. So we can have lots of different types of environments. And that was one thing that I was really excited to do. The Stargate as a storytelling device enables you to go anywhere. So we wanted to see those other places. We wanted to see those other visuals, I should say. Not so much the other places, because Stargate did that, the show did that. But we wanted to see these other visuals. And you know, and we did that in the game that we developed.
Was there kind of a push-pull continuum going on in terms of acknowledging what came before and wanting to create something completely new? Because from what I have seen of the game, there's a lot of material that is re-examined in the game from the series. Langara, you've got Tartarus, you've got these already established locations. How much of that did you want to have pre-existing to the canon, and how much did you want to of that? What like percentage did you want to introduce total new stuff to the canon?
We wanted a story as fans, and I mentioned before, I preferred stories that continue and build over time, and so we tied into those elements of SG-1. So things like the Ancients, what Anubis was doing, all of those things were elements that were building over the last couple of years through the show, and we thought, well, we need to pick a moment in time and set our story in between seasons, but fans would obviously know what had happened up until that point in time, but people new to the show or new to games that just wanted to play a cool first-person shooter, we had to bring them up to speed as well. So if you were a fan of the show, you kind of knew what was happening with the Ancients and Omar and Daniel in the past, and you know he'd been ascended and then he's come back and all those type of things. And so you would really kind of get that extra layer of detail because you knew that it tied in so closely to the TV show. But if you were new to Stargate, you know, all these concepts were explained to you, so you were able to watch it without having any prior knowledge of the series in the past. But as a fan, personally, I I really wanted something that was able to start and finish within the confines of the game and not have significant impact on SG-1 going forward, because we wanted it to stand on its own but be able to be considered part of the story. It's just part of the story you didn't watch on the TV show. That was really the sort of start of how we were putting the story together. So we created a new enemy called the Haaken. And these guys were essentially bottled up by the ancients years and years ago because they were very strong, they were very aggressive, they were very powerful.
So they couldn't kill them, they could only imprison them.
They could only imprison them.
Wow.
And we made and one thing we did, we made that the reason that the ancients no longer interfere. So this was the reason that the ancients no longer interfere, because once they did it, and it did not go well. We don't know why it didn't go well at the start, of course, but spoilers for the end of it, the bad guys are bottled up at the end as well, right? And the way we get there is kind of cool, but it starts and finishes within the confines of the game. The characters could have mentioned these events later in the show if they wanted to, but it didn't fundamentally change who they were.
Yeah, my understanding was that there was a plan, during one of the season finales for there to be a reference to the Haaken. And
I don't know if it was a season finale, but at some point there was a reference.
Mm-hmm.
I got a call from Peter DeLuise, who directed the audio, the voiceover sessions, asking me a question, and I think it was very early in the morning. So, and I forget what I said. What was the name of blah blah blah? And I'm like, oh yeah. He goes, yeah, that's right. And then that was it. But I think obviously with what happened going forward, that was ultimately cut. But that would have been very cool just to have that little reference for people that were fans of the game to sort of hear, oh, I remember that. That was from the game. And the dev team would have been very happy with that as well.
Absolutely. Just an acknowledgement for sure. The Wikipedia entry for the Alliance says that it was set just before Threads. To your recollection, would that have sounded right?
What season is Threads in?
Season 8. It's just after Reckoning, when the Replicators and the Gould have wiped each other out.
Yeah, it sounds about right.
Okay.
I mean, we did have Replicators in the game.
Mm-hmm.
They were not. That Anubis was at the start of the game. We know that Anubis is kind of struggling a little bit with the Replicators, which is he actually unbottles. He releases the Haaken.
Anubis was a fool to free us for certain, but only because he did not understand our true power. Anubis granted us the path to our freedom, and for that I take some small remorse in destroying his forces. Some small remorse.
He takes a gamble, so he knows they're very strong. He knows that the concept of the game is Anubis is searching for something, and so SG-1 is like, well, if Anubis is searching for this, then we need to find out what this is. And essentially what we find out is that Anubis has unlocked or begun to unlock the Haaken because he's losing, and he doesn't have the ability to lock them up again. He's searching for an artifact that the ancients split into 3 pieces because they took a view that back in the day they took action, they intervened, and this was not a good decision, and so they split this technology up so that they couldn't do it again. And Anubis is searching for that technology, and that's what happens throughout the game. Anubis and SG-1 are searching for the pieces of the artifact of this ancient technology. And so he's taken a gamble that he can find pieces of the artifact before the Haaken become too powerful and get rid of him. Because the Haaken kind of view everyone as just chattel. They're not a concern. And in terms of if they were to get to full strength, they're genuinely not a concern. So they were a step above the power that we'd seen throughout the Stargate and could threaten the ancients as well. This is also why we had to contain them by the end of the episode, by the end of the end of the game. And the game is kind of like a season of the show. So each mission would have been an episode of a TV show. You know, you go to a different world, you have something you've got to work out, you uncover it, you come back. You know, so it played out like that.
Makes a lot of sense to approach it that way. So this would have been a while that this would have taken place. So it would have probably concluded around the time before Threads. Then just been running parallel to the missions that we saw playing out on screen.
I mean, from memory, yes.
Okay.
It was definitely set within that in between season time frame, and that's why we had Peter on board. So Peter was able to give us a bit of advanced. You know, this is what we're doing down the track, and we read some early scripts, maybe from Threads, to sort of see where things landed, so we could kind of match them up to that kind of time frame. And obviously, because although those episodes would have come out well before the game had been released, we needed to kind of, you know, production time for a game is a long time, so we needed to know these things pretty early.
Were the Haaken limited to the Milky Way, or were they throughout the universe?
They were being unlocked, or being released, so they weren't fully out, but they're in lots of different places. So they're the universe.
Wow.
I mean, they are a threat to the Ancients. The Ancients couldn't beat them, so the Ancients had to do what they could, which was lock them away. So they were a powerful force.
Was there any consideration to the Haaken being in any way involved in the plague that destroyed all life in the Milky Way and made the Ancients move on before they reset everything? That was something else?
No, we didn't. Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to get that clarification, because the diehards among us would be curious as to if that was what you were tapping into.
Yeah. I mean, look, you know, who's to stop us saying yes? I can say yes. Yes, that absolutely was it as well. who's gonna stop me now? Well, you know.
What would the course of the adventure have been like? Can you give us like a little bit of a 30,000-foot overview? The relationships with the characters, how they would have played against each other along the way, some familiar faces that we would have seen. Some of this has been leaked online over the years. I know a few of the names myself. Okay, Who were you really excited about getting, and talk about, you know, what was accomplished?
Well, again, being massive Stargate fans, we're like, well, we can't just have anyone come in to do the voices, you know. So we had all of the main cast, as much of the supporting cast as we could get in. We had Peter direct the voiceover sessions. We did facial mapping for SG-1. So you play as Jack or you play as Samantha. It looked like them. So the game basically took place through missions with the four of you, SG-1 go on missions. And based on the mission, you would play as a different key character. So if you played as Jack, they all had different abilities, because in a game we want to try and mix up the gameplay a little bit. And SG-1 do bring different things to the TV show and their missions and their different skill sets. We needed to enhance that for the game. So Jack had a sniper ability, you know, so we used that in different missions that tied into the storyline for that mission. As things developed, Sam was able to use the ribbon device. So she uses the ribbon device at some point.
All right. That was
Jack
never utilized. Except once.
No, it was never utilized.
Seth, and that's it.
So, yeah, so we kind of, and again, we still respected the reasons those things happen. So we didn't just go, it's a free-for-all. You know, we still respected those storyline limitations of those different technologies. Except for one thing. We basically said that this artifact that came back, this ancient technology that came back, this kind of unlocked a little bit of remnant ancient from Daniel. Mm-hmm. So he was ascended, he came back, and he's exposed to this ancient technology, and it gives him some abilities. So he had some weapon stuff that was not so much an offensive weapon, but it would cause problems. It was an ancient light, you know, that type of thing. He developed things where he could see through walls. And it sounds a bit silly now, but the way it was presented, it looked right. So he could see through things. And he had, from a storyline perspective, he had a sense of any connection to ancient side of things. So the Haaken for him were a problem. Right? And then Teal'c had melee abilities. that we didn't really see much. I mean, we saw it in the show, but that was his specialty. And then if you're playing as Jack, for example, you can order the other three to go and do certain things. If you're playing as Sam, you can order them to do other things. So the missions were designed to take advantage of that primary skill set of the player character, the main player character, but you did kind of need to use all the characters to undertake a mission. Daniel could translate stuff. The other players couldn't translate stuff. So there were different skills involved. And basically the game involves them in a search for what Anubis is hunting for. They go to Kheb. Omar is in the game as well as a storyline element. She's in there. They learn what Anubis is searching for. They learn about the Haaken in the way Omar explains things, which is pretty vague. They search for these artifacts. They get a couple. There's betrayals. There's crossovers. There's a whole heap of stuff that goes on. We had one cool thing which I again, you could do this in a game. So we'd shoot missiles through the Stargate. So there was one mission where they needed some supporting fire. So they were able to paint targets on their side and missiles would come through from the gate.
We have a lock, SG-1. Firing.
So there's things that you couldn't do in the TV show from a budget perspective all the time, but we could do that sort of stuff, and so we took advantage of it, and then we did have in an early build of the game we did have replicators. We did in fact the way we presented it to MGM was we kind of did this might indicate sort of the time frame when we started pitching this. There's an episode one of my favorite episodes where the replicators overtake one of Thor's ships. Is it season 5 finale or
Nemesis.
Season 4 finale or something?
It's great.
Nemesis. So what season's that?
Season 3.
That's season 3. Okay, so we would have started talking to MGM maybe season 4 or season 5, but we used that episode as our sort of internal prototype.
Incoming! Enemy spotted! O'Neill, enemy 12 o'clock! Incoming!
Incoming! General! Enemy 12 o'clock!
Well, if we can get you got to look back 20 plus years of computer technology. If you can get replicators in any sort of numbers in 3D on a screen, then you can probably do the rest of it from a technology point of view. I mean, I'm simplifying that, but
For sure.
So that was part of our original prototype. And then we did. So I think the replicators got cut from the early part of the game, but they do make a little guest appearance towards the end from memory.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
I am interested to see how before I do that, would your player experience have been fixed at all times, whereas you need this character to get through this situation, you're in control of this one? Or would that have been different based on your difficulty level? Like if you had it on ultra hard, you would have to figure it out yourself?
I don't recall that side of things, but we certainly had things that the player and or the other 3 bots would have to do to trigger certain events. But we had co-op mode as well. So the challenge is if you know that you're playing as Jack, for example, and the other 3 are doing their own thing, we as the developers can force Daniel to go look at a particular thing and go, oh, this is interesting. Maybe we should go through here. But if you're playing as 4-player co-op, well, a human is now controlling Daniel. So how do you force those type of things? And we were just kind of getting through those side of things when the project went pear-shaped. But you absolutely had you as the main character were the driving force of that mission. But SG-1 is a team, so the missions were resolved by team interaction. You couldn't get through the game, and you had to sort of use your teammates as well. So the idea was you couldn't get through a mission just going on your own and not using the you could issue orders to the different members of the team, or orders. I mean, Daniel's not issuing an order,
right,
but
yeah.
in our so the idea was you wouldn't be able to get through a mission on any difficulty level by just going through yourself. You had to use the team. That might be to provide you covering fire, or to take out, you could focus attention on a particular enemy. You could order the others to do that. You wouldn't have been able to get through the missions without being able to do that, without being able to order them around.
So the intent was from the beginning for you guys to have, for players to have up to 3 of their friends participating with them through this experience. That's pretty darn awesome.
Yeah, I mean, that would have been tricky, I think, on PlayStation. On one, so the idea was online, it's fine. But if I'm not mistaken, I think there was, I think they wanted us to have this split screen on Xbox. PlayStation was out of the question, I think, but they wanted us to have the split screen on Xbox, because I think from memory, split screen co-op or multiplayer was a big thing on Xbox back in the day, and they did have split screen. But ours wasn't just multiplayer; it was multiplayer co-op. So it's a story-based game. It's not like if you're playing deathmatch or something, when one player dies, they just respawn and start again. In the missions, a player could go down or a teammate could go down. That didn't finish the mission. That didn't stop the game. Someone had to go over and heal them up, essentially. And so we had a story conceit where early on, Thor gives them some shields, basically, right? Because obviously, if you're looking at SG-1 as a TV show, someone gets shot, they go down. Like, they're not getting up and finishing. Well, we can't have that in a game. So we had the conceit that Thor early on gives them these specific shields. They run out of power very quickly. They need to recharge, etc., etc. But it basically allows the player to get shot a lot of times without the mission failing. So you would have to go, and someone would go down, and they could, you couldn't move on until someone had got over to rescue them. But of course, they can get shot while they're rescuing as well. So you got to manage those side of things. But essentially, players would have to work together. And if you're doing that in co-op, it's very different to doing that versus just deathmatch. So I think the technology might have limited us on that split screen side of things. But on PC, that was achievable.
I would also think that the Zat gun would have to is it ganking? Is that the term that I'm thinking of, where you would have to limit it?
Is that what the kids call it today? I don't know.
I'm not entirely sure. You would have to really limit its power because it's way too powerful. So
we did have the Zat gun in there. I think we limited its charge or something.
Okay.
We did have some limitations. We had staff weapons in there, and we had. I think we changed this from memory. Does the staff weapons charge up? Do they charge?
They can always fire them with whenever you want, but I mean, you could supposedly add a charge. I mean, if you're gonna slow down that. I mean, to the staff weapon. So we had it. You could just shoot it, and it would do 1 point of damage or whatever, or you could charge it up and send a more powerful blast. Oh, okay, that was completely original for you. Okay.
Yeah, so we made a couple of different modifications. I can't remember with the Zat gun whether we did it 1, 2, and 3. But I think we probably would have. But we chose the weapon loadout for each mission. So this was not the type of game where you walk around and just pick weapons up off the ground.
Okay.
We set the starting lineup of the weapons in that mission, and I don't think you could pick up. I don't remember 100%, but I don't think you could pick up sort of enemy weapons as you went. Certainly in the single player, anyway.
Okay. I've seen Carter wielding a staff if one is dropped. So in certain circumstances,
oh well, there you go. So then it's made a liar out of me. So then you could. But again, we still limit what's available. So I don't think we would have had Zat guns. I can find out, but I don't think we had Zat guns floating around to pick up. In multiplayer, you would have had that. So in just sort of that's a bit more of a free for all sort of gameplay mode. Weapons would have been available.
What did you do to replicate the environments like the SGC? Did you get tell me about the process of recreating something like that, because in so many games, the spaces are made to appear enormous, and with this one, you do take I'm talking about established spaces that we've seen. You could fit 3 or 4 times as many people in there. What did you do to make it, believable but also practical at the same time to replicate this kind of a space? And how did you recreate it? Was there set photography? Did you have the original blueprints?
Yeah, we got a whole stack of folders from MGM for each season, so we had access to all the pre-production documentation. If they're doing a ship or a set or whatever, we had all that stuff. We then did our own design because we had new locations, new races, new enemies, all of those type of things. So we had our own pre-production side as well. But for the SGC specifically, I mean, we went to the studios a couple of times, and so we were able. We took video footage, and we had the set. Well, the set layout's not necessarily the layout that is believed to be in the series. So, they're different. But certainly from the gate room, you've got the control room, and you've got the spiral staircase that goes up to the office up there, and Hammond's office or the meeting room and Hammond's office on the side. So that was all in there. But from then, you kind of you have a bit more freedom in what you do. Again, based on the mission. So we had the missions that have gameplay in them, and then we had cutscenes in between each mission, and even sometimes within missions. So we would see different areas of Stargate Command, but the times you could actually walk through it were there were some missions that were in Stargate Command. Things go badly at one point, and the SGC becomes overrun. And so you're fighting through the hallways of SGC, and I think in the trailer we had there's a scene in the trailer for the game where Carter gets thrown out of a window by
a Kull warrior,
by a super soldier. Yeah. So she gets thrown out of the control room or whatever is by a Kull warrior. So we had all the designs so we could replicate that. So the things that you saw in the show were as close to what we could do. We then, for things that you hadn't seen before, we had the freedom to do what we wanted to do, but we obviously kept it in check with the design aesthetic of the show.
Who were the Extrenites?
The Extrenites, these are some dudes, if I get this correct.
It's only been 20 years, come on.
Yeah, 20 years. They were. We did have a mission with the Extrenites, but I think it was cut for time. But their story element still stayed the same. So the Extrenites were a race that were around back in the day, where the ancients were sharing information and kind of took the Haaken under their wing a little bit, and went, well, this is a race that we can help. And so they shared their technology.
The Extrenites under their wing.
No, the Haaken.
The ancients took the Haaken under their wing. Okay.
Yeah, because the Haaken were peaceful at the time. They were developing. They were doing everything.
Okay.
And the Extrenites were a race that the Haaken obliterated. So they took that ancient technology, they learned from it, they grew and expanded, and then they got aggro.
They weaponized.
They got aggressive.
Yeah.
They weaponized it, and the Extrenites were a race that were destroyed by the Haaken, and we see that in some flashbacks that Daniel has.
So there's nothing left of them.
There's nothing left of them.
Wow, it's very similar to what happened when Tolan gave technology to its sister planet in their solar system, Sarita, and they blew themselves up. So,
yeah. I mean, I think this concept of technology corrupting, we didn't invent that one.
No,
but,
unfortunately, it's very true today.
But it also made sense. It made sense for it to be a reason why the ancients go, no, we're out. We're not doing this again. We did it before, and it went badly. And the Extrenites were not the extent of what the Haaken did as well. So they were pretty bad guys.
Boy, oh boy. Tell me about one of my favorite aspects of the game, the score, or games in general. Was it completed? How was it dynamic based on the situation?
Absolutely.
And how would that have worked?
So we had if I remember it correctly, I remember the outcome correctly, but not necessarily the creation of it. But from memory, there were orchestral sections created because we didn't want MIDI. So back in the game, like computer generated audio. For me, and I'm a bit of an audio music guy as well. So for me, the score for Stargate is a core part of it.
Joel Goldsmith's fingerprints are all over that franchise.
Yeah. And so again, we wanted to replicate as best we could the Stargate experience in a game. And so we didn't want to do MIDI if we could avoid it. And we didn't want to have just a play, we could write and record or compose and record an orchestral soundtrack, but that doesn't take into account the dynamism within a mission. So we wanted to have a situation where I'm walking along, exploring whatever, and then a glider comes in and starts attacking. Well, I can't just have the same audio playing through that, or playing on a sequential sort of timer. So we wanted dynamic audio to be able to take place while having that orchestral quality. And so we wrote some code that would basically stitch together these different pieces of audio. And from memory, it's not even stitched together, but the way it comes about is it creates a dynamic orchestral soundtrack. So when you're exploring, you've got the music playing out, and when you're under attack, the music changes to that. But it doesn't just fade one out and bring one in. It actually blends them together and makes it dynamic.
Like there's an alternate version of it that's more intense that just feeds right in.
Well, it might not be an alternate version of that same theme, but it might be a battle theme or whatever. And I'm saying blending, that might not be the right technical term, but it definitely was not. It was not fade one out, fade one in.
Okay.
That was not what we were doing, because that's obviously quite simple. It really was for me, it was a really proud thing that we were able to do, because, and I don't know if I'm sure they're doing this today, but back then there was nothing like that. And the game really sounds like, like it's orchestral and like it's from the show. It's thematically on point.
Did you acquire sounds from production?
We had sounds in terms of like zap guns and weapons and things like that. Yeah. So we had that. We had recordings from production.
Okay. The Stargate itself.
Stargate itself, yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we pretty much had access. In general terms, we pretty much had access to what they had.
Okay.
They were very. They were very. The production team was very supportive of the game. They didn't have time to be involved as a general rule, so that was fine. It's ours to produce, but what they had access to, they let us have access to.
What do you think was the most?
That's my recollection of it.
Okay. What did you think was the most ambitious, set piece or mission that you had conceived? Where was this really going to make fans go, "Wow, this is cool for Stargate"?
Well, they may be different answers to what's ambitious and what's really cool.
Okay.
I think the really cool thing is when SGC gets overrun, it's a key story point. It's an intense time in the story, but let's be honest, running around the SGC shooting stuff, that's fans would like to do that. I think that's a pretty so it's overrun by it's got Gould in it, it's got Kull warriors, they're on a mission, you're against the clock, the self-destructors set. There's another element in there story wise. There's a traitor in the midst, let's say.
Okay.
And they realize partway through that mission what has occurred. So essentially what happens is they have stolen back one of the pieces of the artifact from Anubis. So SG-1 technically kind of lose this. Anubis has two pieces of the artifact. They have one. They take it back, so they think they're in more control again. But what they realize is that the artifact that they've stolen back Daniel doesn't quite have the same connection to it, and he can't work out why. Because he has a connection to these pieces of the artifact because they are ancient technology. But the way they retrieve the artifact, it's all very last minute in the heat of battle, blah blah blah. They get back, and before they can work out, well, before Daniel can really kind of assess what's going on with this thing, they realize that it's a decoy, and it blocks the closing of the iris.
So they can't shut it.
They can't shut the iris. So they're and Anubis has to get the piece of the artifact that we do actually have.
So he can't just blow us up.
He can't just blow you up.
Yeah.
Because if he blows you up, he doesn't get control of the artifact. He can't bottle up the Haaken, and they will wipe him out. Right. So Anubis really is taking a big gamble with this, which highlights the desperation he's in from things that are set up through the TV show. You know, when our story takes place. So he can't just blow it up. So he has to send the Kull warriors through. They're overrunning and there's a Kull disruptor as well. So just prior to this, we've realized we've been to one of Anubis's bases, and we've found some things. We've gone to a Tok'ra base, I think, before this as well. So we had the whole crystals thing, you know, the crystals, they put the crystals in the wall, the caves open, the caves. We did all that stuff in gameplay.
Wow.
That was very cool. But so in there, they discover a sort of Kull disruptor. They all do the leapfrog, like, you know, the Kull disruptor destroys the Kull warriors, and then they overcome it, and then they create a more powerful one, and then they overcome it. So they had a new version in there, but it wasn't working. So they don't really have a defense against the Kull super soldiers. So they're just mowing everyone down. But the reality is, if Anubis gets away with the artifact, he's going to control everything. So they are up against it in terms of the self-destruct, because they're like, well, if we can't stop this within a certain amount of time, we're just going to blow the thing up. They can't shut the iris, and they can't stop the self-destruct unless they can shut the iris and deal with all the Kull warriors in the SGC. So that mission was very cool, both from a gameplay perspective in terms of running around the SGC shooting stuff up, and a storyline perspective, because, spoiler, they lose.
Target that Jafar!
Nice shot! Ready? Shot! Enemy down!
Focus on the Jaffa until we get some disruption.
My target.
my target.
Opening fire!
Shot.
See no.
Fire on my target.
Doing that for weeks!
Thanks, Daniel.
Colonel Carter, East at 9 o'clock.
Fire on my target.
Colonel Carter, aiming at 12 o'clock.
Target that Jafar.
Cover me.
Firing! Ready!
Okay. Everyone take one of these. These are new versions of the Kull Disruptor, but they're not finalized yet. When we encounter a super soldier, we'll all need to concentrate our fire on them to take them out. You won't be able to take them out on your own, and they'll still take a beating, so be careful. Understand?
Ready! Incoming! Area secured.
The gate has shut down. It's redialing. We have no control.
What's going on?
The super soldiers got our 2 pieces of the artifact.
They must be trying to get away. Fire on my target. I think you're right. Let's have a look. We need to disable that for now.
So the Kull Warriors get away with a piece of the artifact. We have our trader identified, which hits hard. And we've obviously had the loss of, the SGC has been attacked. So I think there's also an image in the trailer of the SGC in the gate room destroyed.
The gate room is gone, and the Stargate is on its side against what would have been the original concrete foundation. I was always wondering if that was a red herring or if that was what happens.
Nope, that happens. So at the end of that mission, there's an explosion in that room. This is the low point for SG-1 and the SGC. Like our home base has been destroyed. We have a beta site in the game as well. The beta site's been overrun by this point as well. The home base has been overrun. We've lost an artifact, a piece of the artifact, where we thought we had two, but we realized we only had one because one was a decoy. The decoy let the bad guys into the base to steal the one piece of the artifact we did have. So now Anubis has all three pieces of the artifact. We've lost colleagues, friends, and a character that's in the game who's betrayed us. It's a low point. Things are not looking good. Wow. So that's, I would say, from a gameplay and sort of story perspective, that's the thing I think fans that was a good point. In terms of ambition for the game, I mean, the whole game was pretty ambitious. I mean, to set the co-op side of things was ambitious. I mentioned earlier, we cut a number of missions, and that was just because it was just too big. And we cut them early, so it was, that was okay. But we were putting together a very big game. And look, we had a big team. We had a team to do it. You never have enough people on projects like that. But we had a pretty big team. The ambition side of it was the whole thing.
Yeah,
like the whole thing was ambitious.
But
we had the team. We had the team to be able to develop it.
This is true. You've got Carmen Argenziano. His voice was recorded.
We received a message from Thor telling us that you'd be on this planet. We were around, so I thought I'd drop by.
Don S. Davis as General Hammond. His voice was recorded.
They realize how important it is for us to get any additional information we can about the artifact, and this vision is all we have to go on for the moment. The Ritu accompanying you are aware that not all of them will survive. We've given them the gate address, and the Ritu will meet you on the planet.
From a perspective now where it's like these people are gone and only more people are going to continue to go as time moves forward, this would have been a really awesome kind of, in addition to the show, kind of a time capsule of them and another aspect of utilizing the actors and their characters for this. It pisses me off, man. So
pisses you off. Well, imagine myself and 100 other people that worked on it for a couple of years. That's and it didn't need to happen. That's the
I'd like
that's the disappointing
talk
part.
about that in a little bit here, but I'd like to bring in my colleague Micah. This is Micah. He is my Stargate fan / gamer. I consider myself a gamer, but this is the definition of gamer sitting next to you here on the screen, sir. So, Micah, have you been listening?
I've been listening, yep.
Jump in. I'm going to pull back.
Okay, well, first question I want to ask is can you explain the meaning behind the title? Like, what is the Alliance actually?
Yes, the Alliance. The Alliance is essentially an agreement between the Haaken and Anubis. It has different meanings for those two sides, but it is the alliance between Anubis and the Haaken. And so Anubis is using the Haaken to achieve his goals, and the Haaken are using Anubis to get their freedom. And they're both basically racing against each other to they're not worrying about what's going to happen now, because they're like, we are friends at the moment, we can get this done, it's fine, even though they both know they're using the other side.
It's an arrangement of convenience.
It's like what happens after that is more the issue, and that's why Anubis is looking for the artifact. The Haaken aren't particularly worried about Anubis, but that's what the alliance is.
Wow.
Okay.
So he can't control him by himself, and if this thing's
he can't control him by himself, and in the teaser trailer, where Anubis is in the trailer, the tagline or the title at some point is "Ancient Evil Rises," right? And that was purposeful. That was to sort of indicate in some way it's not ancient just because it's old. There's a connection to the ancients. Yeah.
All right.
It sounds like it could have had multiple meanings too, because you said the Haaken and the ancients were kind of aligned at one point as well, right?
Well, it's not that they were aligned. Back in the day, the Haaken were peaceful,
Okay.
and the Haaken might have been like the humans were to the ancients back in the day. They're just a race. They're developing. We will help them out, or we won't help them out, or whatever. But they're peaceful, relatively speaking, and relative to the ancients, benign. That's the key point. The Haaken were not aggressive at all, and even if they wanted to be, had no ability whatsoever to deal with the ancients. It's only through the ancients sharing of this technology by helping them that they became the force that they became.
Okay. So next question I have is you were talking about dynamic soundtracks. That was something I think everyone really remembers Left 4 Dead in 2007 or 2008.
Oh yeah.
That was probably the first game that had that. And you guys were a couple years ahead. What other technological feats were you guys trying to tackle with this thing?
The 4-player co-op was a big one back in the day, and not just because it was 4 players on the screen, but it was a story-based game. So I think I touched on before, if you're playing if you're playing as Jack, and you need Teal'c to go and do something, we as the developers can trigger Teal'c to go and do a certain thing. But if Teal'c is played by a human, well, we have to prompt the human in some natural way to go and do that thing as Teal'c. And you could play, and I'm not sure if we had this side of things done, you could play as any one of the 4, or sorry, if you only had 2 people, you could play as Teal'c and Jack, or Teal'c and Sam, or Teal'c and Daniel. So we had to have the different combinations of those prompts ready to go. I don't think we had that side of things done, but that would have been that would be groundbreaking for the time, to have a co-op game that was story-based, and unfold the way the missions did.
Yeah, I think like there was a huge co-op gaming trend, but that didn't start until like the late 2000s. So y'all would have been on like the forefront of that, I think.
And I don't, from memory, I don't know that there are story-based co-op games. So it's different if you're doing it. It's different if you're on a team, like if you're playing Call of Duty or Battlefield or whatever, but a character dies and respawns.
Mm-hmm.
That's different. We couldn't have that. So we had to force players to do certain things, force the characters to do certain things to have the mission continue forward. And we couldn't just we didn't want to just respawn them, and we didn't want to have fails as well. So we didn't want you to have to start the whole mission over again. You had save points and things like that, but there was a lot to that. That's one of those things where you pull a little thread, and you find another and another and another. It just becomes problematic.
Were there other games that were out at the time that inspired the design of this game? Like the shield system is very reminiscent of like Halo 2, for instance. Like, were you guys inspired by that, or
probably.
was it like a natural evolution?
Yeah, I don't know if we were inspired by that. It was more that we're taking SG-1, and we can't have someone take a hit with a staff and the game be over. Mm-hmm. So we have to introduce some sort of sealed mechanism, for want of a better term. We were able to tie that into Thor and those guys in terms of the technology. So they got this technology for a certain reason. But yeah, you need to have some sort of sealed based. If you want any level of realism, if you want a level of realism as it relates to aliens and Stargates and shield belts, you have someone get shot, they're going down. So we couldn't have that.
Right.
Certainly we were all avid gamers, so we were playing all sorts of different games. So I'm sure we would have been inspired by things that were there at the time, for sure.
Right. what kind of technologies were you guys working with at the time? Like what engine were you using? Were you using like third party like physics solutions? Like what like tell me all about
Yeah, so
that.
we were using the Unreal Engine at the time. I think it was 2.5 for PC, Xbox, and PlayStation 2. That was fine for PC and mostly for Xbox. For PlayStation, it was problematic. So we had to cut our levels up. So the idea was that you would play the game, certainly on PC, you could play the game, you load the mission, and you didn't have load times from memory. Whereas on PlayStation, we would have to break the mission up into smaller chunks so that it would fit in the PlayStation's memory, and maybe Xbox as well, but not as much. So that was a challenge. I'm sure we were using a bunch of other third-party technologies. My view on technology back then and now is I'll license a piece of tech so I can focus on what I want to focus on. So when we started doing video games, we did a boat racing game, and there were no 3D engines at the time. It was just at the start of 3D technology in video games, or real-time 3D, and so there was no technology that could do that. So we had to write our own, right? And the idea was, you're in a boat racing game. You don't want to just go behind the wake of a boat and not get jostled around, right? So we developed a 3D engine. So if you go behind the back of a boat, you get jostled around and it impacts your steering and things like that, right? So in that instance, because it was core to what we were trying to achieve, we had to write our own technology. We had to create our own technology. And we'll do that now if we need to. But in that instance, it made a lot more sense, notwithstanding the PS2, but that became apparent later. It made much more sense that if we were doing a first-person shooter, that we would be silly to kind of reinvent the wheel and spend mountains of time writing an engine that whereas we could get one off the shelf that mostly did what we wanted to do. And you accept pros and cons with these things, of course. But we could focus on the Stargatiness and the gameplay elements that we wanted versus worrying about the tech. Now, we ended up having to worry about the tech on PlayStation, but that became more apparent later.
Okay.
Micah, how about I ask some fan questions and you noodle what you've already heard?
Yeah, go ahead.
Does that work? All right.
That works.
I've got a number of submissions here, Ben. I'm
Okay.
pull from Facebook first.
Okay.
James Nisley says or asks, was Jonas actually in the game or was he just mentioned? I heard some leaks about him being on his home planet mentioned, but would have been interesting if we actually saw him.
Nisley, yes, Jonas was in the game.
Well, as you know, we've been mining Naquadria successfully for some time now. Anubis came in 2 ships. One has already taken our supply of mined Naquadria. The other stayed to presumably keep us mining more and take that too. Our technology is no match for that of the JoWooD. We
go to their home world.
Yeah.
They form a key part of the story with some Naquadria based things that take place.
Okay.
So yeah, we go there. They are under attack. Anubis has basically stolen all their Naquadria and is subjugating them to mine more and get more because he needs to power this artifact. So even when he gets the artifact, he needs to be able to power it to do what he needs to do to bottle them away, bottle the Haaken away. So yeah, Jonas is in the game.
So I'm a little confused, Ben, because you're saying that he's trying to utilize them, so he's opened the door. At what point in the story is he trying to close it again, or is he doing both tasks at the same time?
He's unlocked them so that they can deal with the ancients for him and the replicators and whatever, but that's not really the main issue. It's really so they can deal with the ancients for Anubis. Because I'm not sure if at that stage there's a scene in the diner with Anubis and what season is that?
That was season 8. That was Threads. Yeah.
Okay, so that's Threads. Yeah. So we know that the ancients and Anubis are on tenuous terms, and it's a little bit nebulous as to what that relationship is.
Mm-hmm. They're aware of each other for sure.
They are aware of each other for sure. And so Anubis is going, well, I can't deal with the ancients on my own. As happens in that episode, I think Oma goes, well, I can't beat him, but I can stop him, which is what they did before, incidentally. So they put the problem off till tomorrow with the Haaken. They bottled them away because they couldn't defeat them, and Omar can't defeat Anubis, so she just engages in battle with him for all time, right? So it's a similar solution that she comes up with. But so Anubis needs the Haaken to help him in his battle with the ancients. He's not really worried about the replicators, and he's not really worried about the Asgard. They're more terrestrial issues that he can deal with. The ancients are more a significant problem, but he knows the Haaken can deal with them.
I see.
So he's unlocking the Haaken, but he needs to know that he can bottle them up again before they start to turn on him, because he knows that's going to happen.
So that's what the artifacts are for.
That's what the artifacts are for. But he took the risk. Things were so desperate for him that he took the risk of unlocking them before he could lock them up again.
If no one else can have it, he's certainly not. So he's more than willing to salt the earth. And it makes sense that Anubis would be the one doing this because he has the ancient knowledge. He would know about the Haaken once he ascended.
That is exactly right. Man. Yeah. So it ties into all that lore really well. Yeah.
Incoming! Opening fire!
Damn it, it's closed.
Carter, we are going to need a ship to get out of here.
There must be a control room close by that can open this. Let's have a look around.
Let's get out of here.
Couldn't agree more, sir. Luckily, with all the destruction, we were able to bring down the shields protecting the base, or else we wouldn't have been going anywhere.
You're telling me this now?
I didn't want to worry anyone unnecessarily, sir. I was pretty sure they'd come down.
I just wanted to ask about the whole timeline of this thing. Like when you pitched it to MGM, and also there were a number of publishers who had their name on this thing. Like we had Namco and JoWooD. Can you talk about the relationship there? How they were involved and such?
Yeah, so we went to MGM to license Stargate, and part of the licensing arrangement was that MGM had to have approval over a publisher, which makes sense. I was okay with this. So we couldn't just go and publish it with, QR Smith Publishing.
So MGM wasn't acting as a publisher then?
No, they held the license. They were a licensee. That's it.
Okay.
A licensor. And so we went and did a deal with JoWooD, but our deal with JoWooD was not a traditional publishing deal. We were looking to take equity in a publisher. Right? So we were looking to, again, part of that being in control of our own destiny, and Stargate gave us some of that, or a license gave us some of that, but we wanted to be doing more. So the deal we originally struck with JoWooD in 2003, we were going to put 9 million euros into their company. They're a publicly listed company. So we were going to invest 9 million euros into JoWooD, and they were going to publish the game, publish Stargate. Fine, great. So what JoWooD did at the time in 2003, so this is before any sort of external controversy takes place, they announced that they had signed the Stargate deal, right? And they raised all this money. So they then came back to us and said, we don't need your 9 mil anymore, but we still want to publish Stargate. And we went, oh, and also, by the way, because you're not putting in this 9 mil, we want different terms. And we were like, that's not an option. And they had announced this to the market. So this was not a smart move on their behalf. But the deal we ended up doing then was we got the same terms on the publishing deal that we had negotiated, but we didn't put in the 9 mil. Right. So if you look at that as just an isolated publishing deal, they probably gave away more than they needed. Well, not probably. They gave away more than they needed to have given away in a normal publishing deal, but it was because we were originally investing in the company. So very shortly after that, JoWooD started running into financial problems. Right. And so our arrangement with them, they were to pay for marketing. I mean, they were funding development, but they'd raised money to do that. But they needed to start marketing at a certain point in time. And they had to spend, I think, $1 million US on marketing from memory by a certain period of time. They had to start this spend. Well, they didn't have the money to do that. So we lent them the money to do that. And then we found out, so then we moved forward. We never had a producer from JoWooD on the project. Normally a publisher would put a producer on the project. We would have testing from the publisher. We did all that ourselves. We had to fund all that ourselves, do all that ourselves. We managed the relationship with MGM, which is what was supposed to happen, because it goes, MGM, us, publisher, so we're that conduit between the two, which we knew going in, so that's completely fine. And JoWooD also knew that they were subject to the same terms as us in regards to our obligations to MGM. So we couldn't just go sign any deal left, right, and center. MGM had to approve these things because they are the license holder, right? So we continued sort of through development, and you have typical sort of publisher developer angst, right? But normal vanilla stuff, that was all fine. And I actually had a very good relationship with the CEO of JoWooD, a guy by the name of Andreas Tobler. He wouldn't do everything, not only for our game, but for the business that I agreed with, but that we were always able to resolve any issues, and we both had the same goals in mind. So that's the key thing, right? About a year into development, he got ousted, and they had another guy take over who was from the bank. Right?
Oh, fun!
And we'd met him, and he was fine. He was a difficult guy to deal with. He was pretty insecure, and JoWooD was struggling, and we had undertaken through that period a management agreement with JoWooD. So we were actually helping them run the company and building them back up. But the CEO got ousted, and so this guy came in. And he, over time, as he began to understand the terms of our publishing arrangement, and the fact that this developer had a bit more control over the publisher than he was used to, he really didn't like that. So they owed us a lot of money in development fees, and they owed us money that we'd lent them for marketing, right? Now, he took over, I think, in December or January of 2000. So say January 2005, I think, maybe around then. And over the next couple of months, when we were told payments would be made, but they weren't being made, we had bills to pay,
Mm-hmm.
So we got to about May, and we started pressing to get our funds. And that was around the time of what's called E3, which is a major gaming trade show, which we had Richard Dean Anderson come to.
And the location Stargate, you guys had it assembled down there.
It was very cool. Wow. It was very, very cool. And I can talk about that in a little bit. But the interesting behind-the-scenes aspect of that was JoWooD were talking to a US distributor to get the game on board, which we all knew had to happen. It was great. And Namco were interested. We were like, great. They're a good partner. They're a solid partner.
It's a big name at the time.
It's a big name. I mean, they were more Japanese style content, but they were looking. They had an American, I don't know if it was CEO at the time, but the American CEO in the US at the time, and he was American, not Japanese. So they were looking for more sort of US content. It's like, great, this is a good partner. But of course, again, we need to approve the contract, and MGM needs to approve the contract. So it goes down the line. So we find out of the blue that Namco are interested in this thing. We were not made aware of this. And that the deal needs to get signed before E3 because Namco want the Stargate there. We're like, great, this is wonderful stuff. So they send us a draft contract to review. For us to review from our end, and from MGM to review from their end. JoWooD send us this draft contract. Except it's a signed contract. It was signed a couple of weeks beforehand, and Namco have paid $2 million to JoWooD. So like, right, this is not good. Like, the outcome's fine. Like, the outcome is what we're all driving towards. But you've bullshitted us on the status of this arrangement.
Yeah, you're not in
because you needed the money.
That's right.
Because you needed the cash, and you've taken the cash. And Namco isn't aware that they don't actually have a deal, because JoWooD has no right to sign away the US distribution without my approval and without MGM's approval. So this is a problem. We're trying to get this resolved by E3, because E3 is a big opportunity for us, right?
Huge
We're
press.
unveiling this. We're unveiling this to the US public. Right? So through a lot of stuffing around, this gets resolved, and I would say one of the only reasons it got resolved was because the relationship we had with MGM, the guy at MGM, a guy by the name of Neil Haldar, who I'd worked with for years beforehand, like even trying to get the deal up and running, we'd established a good relationship and we worked well together. He basically went, "Yeah, okay, we'll approve this," and off we go. But Namco was made aware that this deal was not really a deal. They thought JoWooD had the license for Stargate. And I was like, okay, well, where did you learn that? Well, that's what they told us.
Right.
So it was not a great relationship between those two guys after that point in time, right? And we were kind of in the middle. Well, we weren't in the middle. We were like, JoWooD, what the hell are you doing? So we issued JoWooD a breach for that, and I had to. So we have E3. E3 is Namco. If you look at the trailer for E3, it's JoWooD and Namco on the trailer. Fine, we've moved past this now, right? This is what a disaster, but we've moved past it, we've solved it, and off we go. But JoWooD still haven't paid us the money they owe us. Like not even part of that.
Yeah, they're not even trying.
We know they've been paid this money, and we also know they've got financial issues, right? Because there are other areas of the business. They've raised money that since when the CEO got ousted and we stopped, we weren't involved in the share price is doing this and on a downward trend. It was not good for them. But Stargate was their big title, like and in Germany. So sorry, to be clear, they were Austrian based. So in Germany and Austria, Stargate's massive.
It is.
There's a reason we went to JoWooD. Right, Stargate was massive. We chose JoWooD because they were a publisher big enough to do a decent job, but small enough that we could have a bit more control. That was the reason we chose JoWooD. So they're still not paying us. We then say, right, you've got till August 5th. So you've got till August 8th to pay us. It was a Monday from memory. And we give them another month's notice. You got till this time, or we're going to announce that we're terminating the deal. So we gave them the termination at a 30-day grace. We don't hear anything. There's no contact, this and that, whatever. They then sent a producer over. And the producer's like, yeah, this team's got it. Like they're going to be fine. It's going to be late, which we knew. We knew we were going to be late. JoWooD were not responsible for paying us for being late. So they had a set fee that they had to pay. That was it. We were responsible for any lateness. And in the contract, there were penalties for us in terms of royalty penalties for up to a 2-year delay, right? So this was not, it's not ideal that things late, but these things happen. But the producer comes over, finally they put a producer on, joins the company, he comes over, goes, yeah, well, this team's going to be late, but they've got this, So on August 5th, after the market closes in Austria, JoWooD announces to the market that they've cancelled the Stargate project because they've cancelled the deal with Perception because the quality of the game's no good. And they are going to continue development themselves as the rightful owners of the license. I get a call from MGM the next morning going, what the fuck's going on? And I go, I don't know. What are you talking about? They go, this announcement from JoWooD. I'm like, what announcement from JoWooD? And we see the announcement that they put out. Now, what had also happened that complicated matters was between E3 and when this took place, I think it was Sony took equity in JoWooD. Sorry. Sony took equity in MGM. I think it was Sony.
That sounds
so like
about
1,500.
Right, yeah. Or was this 20th
Sony?
Century Fox? Because around there, that was the time that
maybe
they started doing DVDs.
It was 2005.
Yeah.
It was 2005.
Okay.
So they got rid of like 1,000, 1,500 staff, including the people at MGM Interactive. So including the guy we'd done the deal with, and had put someone in there that didn't really understand the space and just kind of inherited this problem. And so we didn't get a great audience with MGM at that point in time. So we went over, we explained what had happened. They're like, well, we want to see builds of the game. We're like, well, you've got builds of the game. We've been sending it to you guys. You guys have given us milestone approvals. And then they go, well, we want someone else to have a look at it. We go, well, you've got the milestones, off you go. And we started getting feedback. And I remember one specific point of feedback, that the resolution of the PlayStation version is lower than the resolution of the PC version 6. Now, for those that don't know, a television screen, we don't control the resolution of that back in the day, right? It is what it is. And a PlayStation has a lower resolution than a PC. It's not really something we can fix. But so this just shows you the knowledge was not there.
Who submitted this note one more time?
MGM.
Okay.
This was their feedback. This was their feedback on the milestone that had previously been approved, mind you. So we were facing an uphill battle. So I went straight to the US. I'm based in Australia. I don't know if the accent gives that away, but anyway, I'm Australian. So I went to the US to sort of talk to MGM to smooth over the relationship because of the JoWooD stuff. And this milestone stuff was all happening throughout. And we couldn't even put out a press release responding until MGM had approved it. And they were sitting on their hands. And it was about a week later that we put out it was a week later, we put out a press release going, we're the rightful owners of the Stargate IP. We are continuing development. There's been no change in development. We've been funding this for quite some time ourselves anyway, and we'll continue to develop it. We'll let you know when there's news to pretty much. Yeah. And it was kind of true. Like, we had no producer, we had no funding from them. Like, we were doing this stuff ourselves. But this was a hit to the team because the team's reputation had been publicly slammed by JoWooD. Bear in mind, I'm getting calls from JoWooD in terms of staff. They're going, like, he's just going crazy. This guy is just nuts. And he was told beforehand that the release he was putting out was not true. So he knew he didn't own the Stargate license. He knew they didn't have code. So they even if they had a legal right to continue development with the game, they would not have been able to do that because we had the code. Like, it was crazy. Now, what I should have done with MGM, when they delayed on this press release and their attitude was a bit standoffish, the big mistake I made in this was going, guys, we are the license holder. If we're the license holder, you back us. You don't sit on the fence. But I didn't do that. That is out of any mistake I've made on this project, that's the big mistake I made. Because down the track, when we took the project to other publishers, we had 3 publishers. We had Koch Media, we had Ubisoft, and Namco at one stage.
Okay. Can I ask real quick? So between this falling out with JoWooD and what you're describing, like, what happened with the deal with Namco? Was that still going on?
Namco went, we're out. We've blown out at one stage. Namco went, we've blown out 2 mil. We're out. This is too hot for us.
Wow.
Okay.
Right.
So JoWooD.
We never saw any of that money. Like, we never got any of that money. That money went to JoWooD, and they basically went, we're out. Man. Because they didn't have a deal with us or MGM. They had a deal with JoWooD.
So despite that, they were still maybe considering a deal with you guys, or? We
absolutely had conversations with them, and I know with Ubisoft and Koch Media why the deals fell over. I'm not sure about Namco. I'm not sure if Namco's in the same bucket or it was another reason. But the reason that Ubisoft and Koch Media deals fell over was because, and we kind of had those in place around, I want to say October. So it blew up in August. I want to say October, give or take, MGM would not approve a publisher. So they never said no, but they never said yes.
Yeah.
And we can't sign a deal unless MGM approves the publisher.
Can't touch it.
Now, and we found out after the fact, the reason that happened was they were like, well, this thing seems a bit risky. Like, we kind of get JoWooD have been stupid, but we don't know. And they didn't have anyone internally to be able to make this assessment. And so they had Stargate Worlds that I don't think it had been announced, but it was done. So they're like, we'll just bury this thing and do Stargate Worlds. Obviously didn't tell us that. And we had a deal. Our deal in place with MGM was there were certain cutoff periods. One was in December or January, maybe. And they let the clock run, and then they told us, right, we're terminating your license. So at that point, you're done. That's it for Stargate as a whole. And for another publisher to pick it up, it was dirt cheap because so much of the development had been done before, and there was no buyout clause, so JoWooD didn't have to be paid back. Right?
How many more months did you need, Ben? Realistically, how many more months did you need to tighten all the screws?
We probably needed 6 months. Give it at a guess.
Is that 6 months? Is that 6 months crunch time or 6 months just regular development, like as you were?
I don't know. I mean, let's just say somewhere around the order of 6 months. Okay. So, if it had come out by the next E3 or whatever, I don't know. But
and you guys have been going for 2 years.
By that stage, yeah. I mean, and you can see in the game that the versions of it that are leaked. There are versions of the game that are leaked, so you can, there's mountains of bugs and there's mountains of tuning that needs to be done, but it's mostly a whole thing. So we were pretty much feature complete, and we're bug fixing and tuning, which is where the real work takes place, to be clear. So it's not like it's an insignificant task ahead of us. We still could have made a terrible game, right? That's still possible, but the game, especially on PC and Xbox, was progressing very well. Again, PlayStation would have been a struggle, but we'd have just cut that up into different slices. But yeah, it probably needed 6 months if I had to guess. But certainly having someone like Ubisoft or Koch Media behind it with a 6 month development window, they'd have thrown mountains of testing at it. We'd have had mountains of support. This thing would have been great.
Yeah, it would have been concrete by the time it got through that process.
But MGM wouldn't approve a publisher. So it was incredibly disappointing. So not only did we lose the money that JoWooD owed us, we lost years of work. So the team lost kind of 2 years of work. Myself, I was on this probably 2 years before that, with a handful of other guys that we had working on this stuff. So this was a lot of time that we'd spent on this, and we put our hearts into it as well. So it wasn't just a financial hit. We've done this creative task, and it's coming together the way we wanted this thing to, and it's gone now.
Yeah. In your estimation,
that was rough.
It's heartbreaking. In your estimation, from MGM's perspective, do you think it was Stargate Worlds that came along and was the shiny new thing that you think was the straw that broke the camel's back?
I mean, I think so. I think so, yeah. I think it was just, I don't think this would have happened if we had Neil there. So if Neil, the guy who was VP of Interactive, Neil Halder, if he'd still been there, I think we would have got a different response. Because MGM wouldn't even put out a release going, Perception, hold the rights. Like, that was the release that was 2 years ago.
They wouldn't back you, yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I say I should have gone, you either commit to us or we're out. Because I would have saved another couple of $1 million myself from continuing the development, right? But, and that's funny, so I do stuff around critical thinking now and rational thinking. And I learned that the stuff that's in that course, based on this whole MGM stuff and this whole Stargate experience, that sort of informs a lot of this stuff. But we could have had a title out by Ubisoft or Koch Media, maybe Namco. As I said, can't remember if they were in the mix at that time or not. But definitely Ubisoft and Koch Media were, well, we're not signing this deal because we don't know if you've got the license. Like, and we're like going to MGM, we're contacting MGM, just going, you need to confirm this. Oh no, we'll have a look at it. So I can only assume it's Stargate Worlds or some other thing that took place, but I don't know 100%.
So did you have like a deadline on holding the license of like December that year, or did they pull the plug early?
No, we had a 5-year. We had the rights for 5 years,
Mhm.
and then maybe an option for another 5, I think. But we did have a whatever that January deadline was, which was kind of like 2 years. We did kind of have a without prior approval. Like, you can't just take the license and not release anything.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So because we were late, that they were in their legal right to terminate. No, there's no question about that. But they let the clock run, and they could have easily given us another few months with no. Arguably, they would have done more for the Stargate license. Well, I would say actually, inarguably, they would have done more for the Stargate brand to have this thing release and be such a positive impact from a gaming perspective that it might have put some energy into other Stargate things that they did, or Stargate game things that they did.
I would have thought that a rising tide would have raised all boats. I mean, World of Warcraft is obviously the big thing at this point. Burning Crusade had come out, Wrath of the Lich King, all this stuff is happening. And, you've got Stargate Worlds covering the MMO space, the online gameplay space. Have Stargate the Alliance covering the first-person shooter space. It's not that never the twain shall meet. They don't have to be like that at all. You don't have to pick one.
We didn't have an issue with Stargate Worlds. I mean, we knew we didn't have the rights to MMOs. So we had the rights to anything else. But we're like, it's fine, whatever. And to me, Stargate is perfect as an MMO. Mm-hmm. Like, what a delight that
it'll work.
Yeah. But we were working on. We had started design on an RPG, and we had started just some really rough stuff on an RTS, so a real-time strategy game. But there was an online element to it in that. Slight sidetrack here to this thing because it was pretty cool. So if you look at like Warcraft 3 and things like that, so real-time strategy games, but with an online component in that there is a computer-controlled JoWooD. So you're playing as JoWooD or Ancients or whatever. And the JoWooD can take, when they win a battle, if you win a game against an opponent, you take over their lands, you take over their worlds. And so you have a map of the universe or a map of the galaxy or whatever, and you can see which JoWooDs are more dominant than others. And if one particular player starts to become too dominant, we step in as the developers and alter the storyline to attack sort of. So there was that. It wasn't an MMO, but there was a persistence to the battle that took place. That stuff was very cool.
It sounds very much like what the system in Helldivers 2, where there's like multiple different factions that you're fighting off, and the devs kind of like take a hand in keeping it balanced and whatnot.
Yeah, but I mean, that was very the RPG. Like, we had designers on the RPG, we had a designer on the RPG. We didn't have a designer on the RTS, so it was just very, very early stuff.
Just an idea.
Yeah, like for us, this was a franchise that, for us as a gaming franchise, we were developing multiple titles. That was the plan for us.
When you say RPG, do you mean like RPG tabletop game?
No. Like back at a role playing game for desktop, PC. Would have been Xbox 360 at the time, probably, and PlayStation 3. I think it was multiplayer. Okay. I'm not sure. It was definitely still story based though. So if it was multiplayer, we still would have threaded the multiplayer in a way that made sense. The other stuff, but I mean, even though there was a designer on it, we had documents. It was still relatively early. We didn't start any actual development on it, but that was what we were going to run into after the Alliance.
Anubis has staged a serious attack on the planet, sir. We had no choice but to divert the Prometheus from going to the beta site in order to help the Langarans out.
What of Jonas Quinn?
We've had no word.
Well, we better get down there then. Walter? Latest intel tells us that there are several depots under heavy attack. The Langarans store their unrefined Naquadria there, so it's probably a good place to start.
Fire on my target. Fire on my target. All right, quick. Sustain an injury. Fire in the hole. Grenade! Fire in the hole. Grenade!
I've got some more fan questions if you don't mind, Ben.
Of course.
Were there any plans to sell parallel merchandise for the game? Shirts, posters, anything like that?
Not from us. I don't know if I can't remember if we had the rights to that. I don't think we did. I think our stuff was limited to video games.
Okay. That's Chance Thompson 8752, by the way. Thank you, Chance, for submitting that.
Yeah.
Wow. I cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh, no, it's just like I imagine if we went to MGM and said, hey, could we do some other merch with this? We could have done a licensing deal. But I don't think we had plans for that, no.
He also wanted to know, was there any acknowledgement of any of the romances in the show, in the game?
Not that I'm aware of. Okay. It's not that I can recall. I mean, having the dude that wrote it, but not that I remember.
Strictly business.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, having said that, they were able to be a little bit more casual. Like I read the script not long ago actually, and there is a, and I don't know if I knew this at the time, 20 years ago, and just went, oh, it's okay, or I didn't realize it. But there is a bit more of a casual. There's a bit more of a casual nature to some of the discussion. So, like Sam tends to be pretty businesslike out on a mission. She's used as a lot of the exposition. So we have to do a lot of exposition in the game because we're not only explaining something. If you're watching the TV show, the audience has to gain an understanding of what's going on, but the action that they're watching also helps in that explanation, right? Whereas as a gamer, that action doesn't take place unless the gamer takes steps. So we have to let the player know what they need to do. So there's the discussions that take place with SG-1 or other characters that are explaining things. There's a bit more exposition on things. So I think the game starts with O'Neill getting injured as a way to train the player on what they do. So he goes through a medical exam. And of course, he's complaining that he doesn't have to go through a medical exam and he's in charge. And the doctor's like, well, I overrule you as the doctor at the moment, you know. So it's like, right, okay, we'll go to that door. Press this button to pick up the gun. Okay, fire at the target. Obviously, Jack doesn't need to do that.
That's right.
But we need to
Developed a
train the
scenario,
player
yeah.
on what they need to do.
Yeah.
And that kind of flows through the game in terms of exposition. But there's also just some lines that in there we kind of took it a little bit further than I think the TV show did in some of their banter.
Daniel, this looks right up your alley.
Looks like some sort of combination lock.
If we wish to proceed, we must solve the mystery.
Is this gonna help? You know, I'm normally so good about not touching things.
Please don't touch anything.
Yeah.
It would appear that we are trapped.
This could be a problem.
Why?
Why? Because these things tend to go bad.
Daniel.
Well, ancient burial sites can often be booby-trapped, but the trap normally only triggers when you do something wrong. I didn't do anything wrong.
I don't think we have much choice. We need to solve this puzzle because there's really no other way out of here.
O'Neill, what is a boobie?
You remember that time we went to watch jelly wrestling?
Sir.
I've seen Indiana Jones. 100 years from now, some explorer will come in and get scared by decayed skeletal remains jumping out at him connected to a pointy spike. I just don't want those remains to be me.
Your faith in me is touching, Jack.
Well, if it helps any, I'm not just looking out for my skin. I don't want those skeletal remains to be Carter or Teal'c either.
I do not see what our current predicament has to do with jelly wrestling.
But it was still in character. It was just there was probably more of it than in a typical episode.
You nerfed,
that's also
O'Neill.
what,
that was the term I was trying to come up with earlier for the Zat gun. You nerfed him. You made him weaker.
Yes. Yes. But that's also why we had Peter on board. So we had Peter DeLuise, who was a director and writer. I think he did some writing
and producer.
Yeah, but he directed a bunch. Yeah, producer. Yeah, but he directed a bunch as well. So he directed the voiceover sessions, but he was also a consultant for us on the script. So we would send him drafts over that, and you know, I don't think there was much that was, hey, that's not a good idea, or you know, maybe you pull that back or whatever. But we had that stopgap if we ever probably went too far, that presumably he would have picked us up on it. Wow. And we certainly had no dramas with the cast, or we had no dramas with the cast in terms of you know, that line's a bit whatever, you know. They all did their thing.
Sure, they did their thing. Absolutely. Night Shadows Wolf 1555. Would you ever try again? You're not in the gaming space now anymore, are you? Not strictly speaking.
No, and what our business was back then, in terms of an independent, you know, an independent AAA developer, there's not really many of them now. And the budgets are a lot bigger now. So we had a AAA budget for the time, but like you add a digit to that budget now. Right. And so obviously publishers want to keep that to an internal team, or, you know, de-risk as much as they can dealing with an external party. So those type of businesses don't really exist. And of course, the other thing is, mobiles. So there, oh, that's my wife on the filter. Hey, it's a different space now. It's probably like features as well, where there's massive budget features, tentpole features, and then there's sort of independent stuff on streaming or whatever. But budget wise, to do this now as a AAA title, it wouldn't get up because I don't think you could justify the budget for the audience.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Micah, any closing thoughts?
The one thing I was wondering was the prospect of including the, at the time, next generation consoles on your minds, or was that just completely out of scope? Because it was at the very beginning of the 360 PS3 era.
Yeah. If we could have skipped PS2 and gone to PS3, we would have. But the installed base of the PS2 made that a non-starter. So PS2 was included not because it was the best platform to release on, but because it was the largest market.
Just had to happen on PS2.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
How did the devs take all this?
I mean, these people worked on this game for years as well.
Yeah, and there were Stargate fans in a concentrated community of Stargate fans, Australia.
Yeah. So this was tough. This was tough. Look, having said that, many of them are still in games now, so the trauma hasn't impacted them in the same way. Like our two designers, the two designers that were on board at the time, like they are kicking ass in very senior positions. So, and coders and audio guys. So Aldo, our audio guy. There's lots of them that have still stayed in development, stayed in games development, but then other people have gone on to do other things. It's a tricky industry. Certainly in Australia, the gaming industry in Australia is very different. The ones that are mainly doing well have moved overseas. Having said that, we had a lot of international talent anyway. So we had about 60 or 70 internal staff, and throughout different periods, I think we had sort of 30, 40 external staff or external contractors doing different things at different times. But so some of them, will have worked in Australia. You had Take Two were here for a while in Canberra. We had, like, when the game finished, we had all the developers that were here at the time and the publishers at the time sort of come into the office and made the office available for people to interview. But all of those, I think every single one of those publishers is no longer in Australia and hasn't been forever. So,
Ben, I really appreciate you being so open to sharing what you guys had created together. I mean, I was such a fan, looking forward to this thing coming out, and then we were just all hit by a fish the day that we got the news that they had pulled the plug. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
This is a title that deserves better. I remember going to Bridge Studios, and Darren and I at Gate World were the first ones to tell Peter DeLuise what had happened. We were sitting down with him to have an interview with him, and this was early season 9 was filming, so this was 2005, and like March, and he didn't know.
2006 it must have been. Yeah, we wrapped up in
that's correct.
December.
Yeah. So he had to take that information in very quickly, and on to an interview. So it was not fun.
Yeah, look, it was not a fun time, and it took a long time to really kind of get over it, both from a personal perspective, and then dealing with the business, and then dealing with, you've got all these staff that are out of a job. So it was not a fun time. When you first asked me to talk about this, I was like, well, as long as the dev team is acknowledged, I'm on board, because that, I cop it in terms of, it was my business and whatever, but it's my responsibility when things go poorly, right? And it's the team's responsibility when they go well, and I'm quite happy with that. And so things went poorly, and that's my responsibility ultimately. Whether it's my fault or not, it's my responsibility. And so those people that worked, worked very hard and put their heart and soul into this thing, they got a loss as well. So they put in a lot of hard work that won't see the light of day in the way it was originally intended in the context of its time. I get contacted probably 10, 12 times a year by someone just going, hey, can you tell me about, are you Ben Lenzo from Stargate? Can you give me a copy of the game? that type of thing.
I guess,
which is fine. Like but the fact that, we're struggling to remember what happened 20 years ago, and we're still talking about this thing 20 years later. There's a bit of a buzz around that, so that's nice. It's nice that people still care about this thing that was never even released. Maybe had the thing been released, we wouldn't be talking right now, because you'd be like, oh, that heap of crap or whatever. Or, oh, yeah, that game that came out, yeah, that was pretty good. I remember that. But you would never have thought of it again. But because it's had this heartbreaking loss, I think this is why people, we get contacted going, oh, hey, what happened with this and that and whatever. So the fact that we're talking about this is nice.
Well, I'm thrilled that there's pieces of it floating around online, that people can see an idea of what was going to be. And I always hold out hope in some way, shape, or form that maybe we'll see something more. But it
hopefully
meant a lot to me and to Micah to have you sit down with us and share your story.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're more than welcome.
I will live long after your kind are wiped from the face of the galaxy.
No.
What are you doing here? Toothless as ever, I imagine.
I'm not as toothless as you may think.
My tremendous thanks to Ben Lenzo of Perception and Stargate fan and gamer Micah Miller for making this episode possible. I hope you were as educated by this as I was. No doubt you're frustrated that this thing never came out, but I'm sure glad that we got a chance to look at it in a little bit more detail, the game, and share some stories from Ben. And if you want more of this content, if you want to hear from the developers as to what they had planned and some of the ideas that they had, maybe see some more art, let us know in the comments below. It's the only way I get the feedback. If you don't want to ever hear about the Alliance again, I understand. It's definitely a sore spot for me, but I want to acknowledge the developers as much as we can because they poured their hearts and souls into this thing. So if you want to see more, let me know. And tremendous thanks to Micah and to Ben for making this episode possible. If you enjoy Stargate and you want to see more content like this on YouTube, click the like button. It really does help with the show and will continue to help us grow our audience. Please also consider sharing this video with a Stargate friend. And if you want to get notified about future episodes, click subscribe. And if you tap the bell icon, you will be notified the moment a new video drops, and you'll get my notifications of any last-minute guest changes which happen from time to time. And clips from this show will be released over the course of the next few weeks on both the Dial the Gate and GateWorld.net YouTube channels. Tremendous thanks to my team of moderators, Anthony, Jeremy, Kevin, Lockwatcher, Marcia, Raj, and Jacob. You guys make the show happen week to week. We gave them a break for this one because I really didn't want everyone coming into the channel and every 5 minutes, having not watched the beginning, saying, "Where is the game? I want to play this thing." But we wanted to share with you what we could find and what we could. My producers, tremendous thanks to Anthony Rowling, Kevin Weaver, Summer Roy, and Bryce Orrs. And thanks to Frederick Marcoux at Concepts Web. He's our web developer over at dialthegate.com, keeping the site up and running. Keep an eye there for more episodes heading your way later this year. I'm sending this out during my break in Arizona with some friends. And we'll be back shortly with new live streams in a couple of weeks here. My name is David Reed for Dial the Gate. I appreciate you tuning in to the Stargate Oral History Project. This was one to add to the books for sure. And I'll see you on the other side. I'm near an airbase.